Reddit, what's your most disturbing, scary or creepy true story? I was around 11 years old, and I woke up in the middle of the night to a man straddled on top of me with his hand over my mouth and nose. He told me to roll over and not scream. I rolled onto the floor and tried to scream bloody murder. I say tried, cause when you are truly terrified it can take a second to find your voice. My mom heard me screaming and came in and fought with the guy. He was at least 6 feet, she was 5 feet 3, and scared him enough with the fighting and screaming that he took off out the window he had come in through. Never did catch him. I'd been living in my first apartment alone for maybe 2 weeks. It was a basement apartment, which meant cheap, and the windows were right at ground level, so you could see legs and shoes walk by. There were 2 bedrooms. I slept in one with the blinds closed, but the other room's window had some water damage, so I kept the blinds all the way up to let it dry out before maintenance came. That room had nothing in it but spare boxes from moving in. One night, I was asleep and then suddenly completely awake and alert. Every fiber of my being suddenly on edge. I looked at my phone and saw it was around 4 AM. I lay in bed for a minute before I turned towards my closed window and saw it, a large dark shadow of a person with a flashlight trying to see into my bedroom. I instantly freaked. I quietly grabbed a small hunting knife and stealthily moved to the hall so I could see into the other bedroom, the one whose window coverings were wide open. As I peeked around the corner, the person was scanning the floor of my bedroom methodically with the flashlight. They were big, had on heavy boots, and keys that jingled. At this point, as a single girl alone in a shitty apartment, I thought this was it. I was 100% prepared to take my little hunting knife and fight this fucker. My adrenaline was sky high. At that moment, my phone buzzed, and I got a text from a friend on the police force who literally asked, "What's going on at your apartment?" I thought, yep, this is a bad guy. He's peering in my windows and is going to bust in any second now, but then he went away. I didn't hear from my police friend after I texted him back. I decided to go lie down on my bed and just wait to see what happened next. Not 5 minutes after lying down, someone knocked on my door with incredible force. The panic mounted again. Now I have no peephole, no safety chain, just a deadbolt at the top of my voice. In case it's a murderer, I want to wake people up. I yell, "Who is it?" I hear a meek voice reply that it is the police. My first thought is, now that is a clever plan to get a girl to open her apartment door. I stood there silently before I heard the voice say again that I wasn't in trouble. I opened the door a smidgen, ready to slam it, to see 2 cops, one backed away from the door and one up the steps. They must have seen my tiny little knife or something. They proceeded to apologize for scaring me. They were the ones looking in my windows. I yelled at them and possibly cried a little. The adrenaline finally broke. Okay. I got the whole story from my friend the next day. Turns out a fellow resident of the apartment complex had gotten drunk, lost his keys, and broken into his own apartment to go to bed. They thought it was mine and were confused by the lack of broken windows. I was terrified at the time, but it's a good story now. When I was a kid and lived in my old apartment, my mom befriended the downstairs neighbor and would often invite her over for coffee and tea because she was always so lonely. A few weeks went by without hearing from her, so we both go downstairs and knock on the door. It was like a movie where, when you knock, the door slowly crept open, as if it had been this way for a while. We walked inside and found her in the bathtub, covered in blood, and the smell was disgusting. Apparently the lady's girlfriend left her and she couldn't handle the pain. My mom's way of comforting me was, "Don't worry, Mark. She was our friend, so she won't haunt us." Gee, thanks mom. This happened recently. It was midnight. I was at the train station waiting for my train to arrive, and there was this really tall guy walking my way carrying a suitcase. As he came closer, I noticed he was struggling to carry the suitcase as it looked rather heavy, and oddly enough it was leaking some sort of liquid. Not water, but it seemed more thicker. As this guy approaches, he orders me to take the bag. The tone of his voice was a little aggressive, and he didn't sound sober. Taking a closer look at him, I noticed he's covered in dirt up to his face and cuts on his forearms. I said sorry, struck for words. I started to walk away. My train starts to arrive, and the guy follows me saying things I couldn't quite understand. I hop on the train. Door shuts. He is outside pointing at me yelling more gibberish. Train slowly departs and suddenly punches the window in frustration with his eyes locked on me. Relieved him on the train. Fellow commuters looking at me puzzled with all the commotion of me and that guy. Creeped me out. I just posted a story about my boyfriend sleeping on the side of the highway for the same reason. Too tired to safely drive. He woke up to 20 people banging on his windows and yelling at him to wake up and leave. Then he woke. He was dreaming it, but he's always wondered if someone was trying to get him. This was a few months after I had moved into my house. I had a long weekend and I was at home just doing some cleaning and cooking. While my food was in the oven, I decided to go for a quick shower. I was drying off when I heard the beep, 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 beep sound of my oven timer letting me know it was time to take the food out. I wrapped myself in a towel and went into the kitchen. I got the food out, started some sides going, and then went back to clean up in the bathroom and get dressed. When I walked back into the kitchen, I noticed that there was a small blood splatter on my white, tiled floor. Naturally, I freaked the fuck out. I whipped around and walked right the fuck out of the house because my mind was instantly filled with ideas of someone breaking in and cutting their leg on the broken window glass and then hiding out somewhere in my house waiting to rape and murder me when I least expected it. I called my then boyfriend to tell him that I thought someone was in my house / something weird had happened in my house. He was at work and couldn't come. So I called my neighbor, told her the situation, and asked her to please come over for a while. She agreed that the blood spot was very strange and together we grabbed knives and slowly creaked open the doors to the extra bedrooms and the closets. No one was there. At that point, I became convinced that they had to be hiding in the basement and starting shitting myself because my basement is huge and scary as fuck. We go down braced for the worst, but there's nothing there but boxes and spiders. After not finding or hearing anything strange, I calmed down, my neighbor left, and I cleaned up the blood. I told my boyfriend I was fine and tried to just go about having a normal day, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I didn't hallucinate the blood on my floor. It was really there. How the hell did it get there? Was there a bad guy somewhere close to my house? What happened? Did I have a mouse that jumped from the counter and injured itself when it hit the floor? A few hours later, I used the bathroom and noticed that I had started my period. I was really embarrassed and ashamed when I connected the dots and realized that when I squatted down to take my food out of the oven, I must have dripped a drop of blood onto the floor. In 3rd grade, I had this strange short teacher named Mrs. Todd. She was always super nice to me in class. She'd always call on me to do the fun activities first, compliment me whenever I did something, and was generally just very positive toward me. At the time, I thought she was perhaps my favorite person in the world. I remember even telling my mother about how much I loved Mrs. Todd. Anyways, one day, I sat down at my desk and opened it up to put crap in it when shockingly I saw that there was a Victoria's Secret magazine sitting in the pull-out drawer. The kid sitting next to me noticed how shocked I was. I thought I was going to get in trouble, and we started talking about how it might have got there. Almost immediately, Mrs. Todd walks up, asks, "What have you got there?" I was seriously confused and told her it was sitting in my desk when I got here this morning. Well, she looks at me and tells me that the kid sitting next to me must have put it there. She kept repeating that statement over and over again to both him and me until I finally admitted that I guess he could have put it there. Maybe a few days after that, she approached me after class to tell me about this special field trip I could go on if I kept doing good in class. It would be a trip with just her and I to the Gulf of Mexico for the weekend. I remember being really excited about it at the time. However, suddenly she got replaced at the school and we got this new teacher that didn't like me as much. I was so heartbroken at the time. It wasn't until many years later that I realized how fucked up that situation was. It scares me thinking about it still. I was living in my car for a few months. I would just drive out of town and park off the side of the road on logging roads or whatever to sleep. Found this one place to park which was nice because it wasn't too far away but also far enough that no one else would be there at night. First night I was there I had a waking dream that someone was outside my car looking in. Freaked me out, but whatever. Parked other places for a few nights. Went back there for a few nights and had similar freaky nightmares both nights. Someone outside the car, trying to get in, etc. Basically said fuck this place and avoided it for a while. Was tired one afternoon and decided to go back to have a nap. Laid there for about 10 minutes before hearing a noise and suddenly there's this other homeless dude walking his bicycle down out of the bush right past my car. I recognized him as someone who runs around picking bottles out of trash cans. Creepy as fuck. Guess he lived in a camp in the bush right there. I've posted this once before in another thread. When I was a teenager I was home alone one weekend and I was sleeping in my parents' room since there was a TV in there. Sometime around 2 AM I felt like I was being stared at from the direction of the hallway. I looked up and I saw a shadow person looking at me. It was weird because it was a pure man-shaped black mass and I could see him in the dark hallway. I'm guessing light from the TV helped. I sat up and stared back, but I was terrified. We looked at each other for probably 5 seconds and then it turned and walked down the hall. A few seconds later I heard a loud crash. I was so scared I turned the TV to the Disney Channel and stayed awake for as long as possible. When I woke up the next morning I walked down the hall to the bathroom and that's when I noticed a mirror that was hanging and fallen off the wall and was shattered. My family still doesn't believe me, but I know what happened. When I was about 8 years old, during recess at school, I noticed a bunch of other kids outside a storage room yelling and warning to others not to approach the door because there was an eyeball staring back at you. I was curious because I didn't understand what they meant, but I could see their fear was real because their faces were pale white as they would try to deter me from taking a peek through the keyhole. I remember bending down slightly so I could get a closer look inside and sure enough, there was an eyeball staring back at me and it freaked me out so much I peed my pants on the spot. It was only later in the day, after I had ended up at the nurse's office, because of the commotion us kids had created, that a janitor had to go into the room to inspect what this whole mess was about. Turns out that someone had placed a mirror against that door and the eyeball we were seeing was our own reflection. I was outside playing with friends one afternoon. We were around 9 or 10. We lived in a quiet area. As we were playing, we noticed a man in a truck drive by over and over again. Each time he passed my friend's yard, he would drive slowly. We then realized that this man was recording us with one of those old handheld recorders. It freaked us out. We ran inside their house and called his mom. She told them they needed to stay inside and that I should go home. I tried explaining that my mom wasn't home at the moment, but she still made me leave. I lived about a mile or two down the road. I've never ran so fast in my life. I was terrified that man was going to find me as I was running back home when my mom found out what happened. She was super pissed off my friend's mom hadn't allowed me to stay at their house until she could come pick me up. Went to my aunt and uncle's house one family vacation about 10 years ago. We drove from South Texas to some small town in Missouri, can't remember the name. We arrived there at 1 AM. Family consisted of myself, 2 younger sisters, mother, father. Most of the family was hungry from the long drive and wanted to see if a McDonald's was open. I was tired from the long car ride and wanted to stay at the house. Mom said one of my sisters would be staying as well. I settled down into the living room watching TV, slightly dozing off. I can remember hearing pitter-patter down the hallway and assumed my sister was just running around. She'd been eating sugary snacks the whole way up. I get a call from my mom asking what I wanted to eat, and in the background, can hear both my sisters arguing. I hear a giggle somewhat behind me, stand straight up and look around. Nothing. I asked my mom if my sister ended up going with them, which she confirmed. I stood in the corner of the room till everyone got back. Thanks for watching and share your stories. Don't forget to consider the idea to maybe think about potentially subscribing. Peace.